we're going to kind of do the same thing we did the other day, in that I want you to go over here into your search bar that's at the bottom of the screen, just like we did the other day. Click in there, type in 2 words, control panel. All right, type those 2 words in, space between them, and hit enter. And if your screen comes up and it looks at least somewhat like this, all right, that's what it should be. Your icons might look different. You might have more icons. You might have less icons. But it should pretty much look the same. All right? If you've got that, then I want you to take your mouse, find where it says Programs and Features, and double-click on that. Now, by default, which means unless told otherwise, yours should be in alphabetic order here. If for some reason you're like, Jesse says, mine's not, then just click up here where it says name. All right, but if it's already in alphabetic order, it'll then put it in reverse alphabetic order. See that? I don't want that, so I'm going to click on it again. All right. Then what I'd like you to do is to take your mouse and using the wheel on your mouse, go down and see if you have MySQL down here. I've gotten rid of mine. All right, but again, it's in alphabetic order. You notice that mine is no longer here. If yours is there, you can keep it. You can keep it, but it's kind of big, and if it's slowing down your machine. So if you do have MySQL, I don't, but let's pretend for a second that was MySQL right there. Then all you have to do is highlight it, right mouse click on it, and choose uninstall. That's all. And it'll probably ask you, are you sure you want to do this? And you can say yes. Because again, it's several hundred meg, you know, and it tends to be a little bit of a pig. The program we're about to go and create right now, it's a bigger pig, but it works a lot better, and it's got a graphical component to it that's built into it. That's why I want to use that. All right. Now, I'm saying this, if you look up on the screen here, again, this is more for the benefit of Devin, who's not here today. But let's suppose for just a second that, you know, you weren't here today. And you're like, you know what, I'm just really, really, really confused. All right? Well, one of the things I showed you before is, again, I wish I wouldn't keep closing this stuff, but I do, and I did. One of the things that I gave you today was this. So this is one of the things that was in that folder that I gave you. All right? And it just says, Jeff Scott, MySQL YouTube URL listing. All right, I showed you this before. I've got to cut the size pretty much down. The reason I'm telling you this, though, is if you look, there is a lecture in here that shows you how you can install XAMPP, which is what we're going to install in a minute. So if you have problems with it, or you think, I'm not sure I did this right, you can always go back and do it on your own and just follow those steps. All right? So I'm going to take for granted that you were all able to uninstall that if you had it on there. Am I correct?
I have like multiple MySQLs.
You've got multiple MySQLs? You should actually be able to get rid of all of them if you want to. All right? It's not going to hurt anything. Now, if one of them was loaded a long time ago, what that means is it came with your machine. All right? Now, what I want you to do next, if you would, is I want everybody to go out to the following website. Don't worry, I'll blow it up in just a second. And I don't believe you have to put any wwws or anything else there. I think it should work just like this. I'd like you then to go out, try to go out to APACHEFriends.org. I think if you just type in that, let's try it. So I'm going to close the one I've got open, and I'm going to type in here APACHEFriends.org. If it comes up, once you've done that, and you can see how slow my machine, the package that I've got running right now that we're about to download, it's called XAMPP. when you combine XAMPP with what I've got running on my system for the to tape, I don't think I could run two software packages on my machine that would slow my machine down any more than these two do when you run them together. So my machine at times is going to run much slower than yours is. All right? Now, everybody got there? Correct? You should all see it. It's nice and big. If you go down there, see the button that says click here. All right? The one that's right here that says XAMPP for Windows 723 is just fine. So just go down to download, which you can see from the top here. Go down to the XAMPP for Windows and just click it. I've already got it on my system, so I'm not going to do that. All right? Now, I'd recommend that you do it this way, and that is click where it says Save File. And by default, on most machines, it'll then save it to your Downloads folder. On most machines. All right, even though I've already got it, I'm going to click Save File anyway so you can see what I do here. So, Save File. And it's going to, or should at least, eventually tell me that it's saving it for me. All right, in fact, it said Download Success. So I'm going to go over to my Downloads folder. And there it is. All right. Again, yours might not be in your Downloads folder. It's wherever your default is on your system when you save files. I don't know because you could have either set it to something else yourself, like your desktop or something else, or it might be set to something else by the system itself. All right? Has everybody been able to find that? Then you should be able to click on it, and then right mouse click, and probably say Run as Administrator. You might even be able to just double click on it. All right? Now it's going to come up, and it's probably going to say something to you like, you need administrator permissions to do this, but if it's your computer, you should have administrator permissions already. Just tell it to run. And then once it comes up, just accept every flippin' default there is, including where it tells you to save it. Please look up on the screen here. It's going to say, I want to save this to C:\XAMPP. You don't want to change that to like program files, XAMPP. That'll really slow down your system. Just don't do that. Let it save it to the default location, which should be there. I'm taking for granted that C drive is your main drive. All right? If it's D or something else, then of course it might be different on yours. But again, I've already got it saved. All right, it would just be overwriting it, which to me is overkill, but you can do that. All right? So when you do that, like I said, it shouldn't take real long to do this. It'll come up and the installer will start running. Like I said, you should be able to pretty much click through. I don't believe there's anything that you have to set that isn't one of the defaults. All right. I will tell you that when I had students at the school I used to work at do this, occasionally they'd run into problems and they'd be halfway through the install and it would just poop out. And they'd have to start it all over again. Don't know why that happened. All right, but I probably have had over 100 students download this and with about a 98% success rate on the first try. It might take a little bit of time. You know, we're all sharing the same bandwidth here through St. Louis, etc. So it might take a couple minutes. While that's happening, I'm going to pass this out. I'm going to ask that you don't type this stuff in. Some of the stuff is just about as close to being wrong as it can be. And again, it's 9:25. My goal is by the end of class, this period, is we're going to go through everything that's on the sheet. There's only a front, there's no back. And then for the rest of the period, you know, if you're still behind on homework, you can do that. But if you're not behind on homework, all right, if you're not behind on homework, then I'm going to show you what I'd like to have you do. All right? So let's get this. Again, if you get time, if you don't, you don't. But if you get time, what I'm planning on doing tomorrow when we start is I'm going to go over the material that's in chapter 3 of this. All right? Now, when it eventually comes back, you can tell it to run right away if you want to. And I see it looked like Andrew at least had already done that, which is fine. But when it comes up, this is what you're going to see. Yours doesn't look like this yet. It will in a minute. But you want to bring up what's called the XAMPP control panel. All right? If you look up on the screen here for just a minute, please. If you say, well, mine didn't come up with anything, you can click here on your Windows button, go down because it's alphabetized, go down to where it says XAMPP, which should be near the bottom, but you always want to choose the one, not the Bitnami for XAMPP. You want to choose the XAMPP control panel. Now, what you may want to do, again, it's your machine, so I'm not telling you what to do. But what you may want to do is right mouse click on XAMPP control panel and add it either to your start menu or click the more and add it to your taskbar. All right, you're going to be using that quite a bit in the next few weeks. I will tell you, once we get done with this, so 3.5, 4 weeks from now, you can uninstall all this stuff if you want to. So if you're saying, Matthew says, yeah, my machine runs really slow anyway, then uninstall it. I will show you where the stuff we create is going to be saved. So if you want to save that stuff, you'll be able to. But again, my hope is within the next few minutes, you'll all be right here. All right? And again, don't worry that mine looks a little different than yours. There's a few things I want to show you about this. So how many people's machines have finished the download? All right, at least a couple of them. Okay. And again, if you have problems or if something looks really funky, just raise your hand, please. This is the only time we should have to do this. So for this first time, like I said, I only want to go till 10 o'clock. Today it might be closer to 10:15 by the time everybody gets theirs loaded. But I don't want this to be real long. I want to give you time every class period to practice with this stuff. That's how you become competent in it. So your two are done, right? Andrew, yours is done. Yours is done, Josh. Ryan, is yours still working? Matthew, is yours done? Okay. Yours is still loading? Okay. Again, yours probably looks when you bring up the control panel just like this, except these two aren't on yet. So you don't have that green. So I just turned them off. Okay. If you look up on my screen, yours may say this, yours may not. But notice mine says, it's warning me. You are not running with administrator rights. You can go into this and set up a bunch of stuff to make you admin. You shouldn't have to with what we're doing. So what way I have it is just fine. If you say mine doesn't say that, that's good. Then yours is already running with admin rights. That's fine. Right? Be honest with you, I've never seen that before. I've downloaded this probably a half dozen times. All right, it's always given me admin rights, but today it's not. I'm not worried about it one way or the other. Finish? A little over half? Okay. Matthew, did yours finish? All right. Let me just show you a couple things. All right. Has everybody other than Jesse then been able to get to this screen? This is called the XAMPP control panel. When you're all done, you can either click quit, you're done, or you can click the X. It really and truly doesn't matter. Clicking the X doesn't hurt anything. What this program does, do you remember at the beginning of class when I started going over chapter 1, I talked about client server? Remember that? What this software does is it allows you to use your machine, can now be used as both a client and a server. This is a built-in server that you can now use with your machine. That's what it is. And this is an example of one of them. I've been using XAMPP for years. There's one called WAMP, all right, and there's one called MAMP. The MAMP one is for Macs. The WAMP one is for Windows. XAMPP does anything. All right. So what's the AMP that's in there? Just so you're aware of this, if you care. The A that's right here stands for Apache. You've got a copy of the Apache web server on your machine right now. The M, MySQL. That's what the M means. And then there's PP. I don't know the order of these, but one of these stands for PHP, which is a programming language, and the other one stands for Perl, which is another programming language. So again, there's XAMPP. There's also WAMP, which just means Windows, Apache, MySQL, etc. And there's MAMP, which means Mac, Apache, MySQL, etc. All right. Now, right now, you don't basically have anything running on here. I will tell you, once you start running, if you look up on the screen, this uses, I believe by default, it attempts to use port 80 on your machine. And if you've already got, let's say you've got a game or something that's set up for port 80, you may have to make some changes on your machine. All right. Literally, you go into one of XAMPP files. That's it. You got to go in there and change a couple settings in there. All right. But if you look up on the screen, please, everybody, even if yours is still loaded, I want you to click this start button and this start button. The Apache one and the MySQL one. you're probably okay just clicking the MySQL one, but we're going to click them both anyway. So I'm going to click the first one where it says start, and I'm going to click the next one where it says start. The order in which you click those does not matter. If they both turn green, green is good. If for some reason you got some kind of an error message, that's not good. All right? So what you've done then is we have started the Apache server, notice again, port 80, and we've started up MySQL. So we've started up both those. We're not into MySQL yet. We are not yet into it. We will get into it in just a minute. All right, still loading? Or you come to call? Good. All right. So we're all at this place, correct? Everybody's been able to click those two buttons and they're green. Is that correct? Okay. I'll just tell you that after doing this for a while, I'm just going to keep asking because, you know, I don't want to assume anything. All right. Then, if you would please look up on the screen here. This is for this week. This is what we're going to be doing. I want you to literally click where it says shell. Click on that button that says shell, and if it looks like this, that's a good thing. All right. You will probably want to just put everything that you do in lowercase. You might find that easier. All right, just to put it all in lowercase. I'd like you to all type in MySQL minus a minus sign U space root. Type that in and hit enter. MySQL space minus U space root. You are in as root user. That means you have the ultimate power to do everything on this machine. Again, it is possible to go in through XAMPP and set up accounts. So let's say that Josh wanted to use it and he wanted some family member to use it, or you can do that. I'm not going through any of that stuff. Now, notice when I hit enter. If that is what yours look like, that's a good thing. If it came up with an error, please raise your hand. No one's raising their hand, so I'm taking for granted that it came up for everybody. All right? And Devin, I know you're not here today, but tomorrow, he usually seems to come in fairly early. I'm going to try, so either watch this tape and try to do this, or tomorrow, we're going to have to do this at the beginning of class. I'm not going on until all 8 of you have it up and running. All right? So let's type in our first command. And again, feel free to put this in lowercase. Right now, if you look up there, it says MariaDB. What the hell is that? That's the binary version of MySQL. Did you hear me? It is MySQL. All right? The first thing we want to do is, believe it or not, you've already got some databases that have been created for you. All right? So we're going to type in show databases. And some commands, you need to put a semicolon in. Some you don't. Look up on the screen. Get used to putting in a semicolon at the end of every command. Because even if it doesn't need it, it doesn't care. So if you type that in and it looks like that, that's a good thing. Occasionally I've had a student, you don't have one that says Rankin, so don't worry about it. That's what we're going to create. In fact, I'm going to drop that one right now. Oops. I'm going to get rid of that database. So drop database Rankin. Oops. And now when I do my show databases, now hopefully mine looks like yours. Here's a question. Again, I'm not trying to insult you, okay? You all know what DOS key is? You know, where you have your arrow keys that are on your keyboard. You all know that if you hit that up arrow key, that it'll bring back the last DOS command you just put in. DOS key works with this. So if you look, see that? I can put in my commands. So if you screw up a command or you want to run the same command again, you can hit your up arrow key. You don't have to do that. All right? So Right now, these are the databases. These are built in to the system. The recommendation is, especially with anything that says schema, don't touch them. Don't look at them. Don't touch them. They're system databases. So let's create our own. Now, I'm going to have you put in a command, and you're going to get a warning message. I want to show you that. So I want you to type in this. Drop database if, boy, this machine is just going nuts right now. Drop database if exists Rankin. You don't have one named Rankin. Now neither do I. So you're going to get an error message. All right, hit enter. It's not an error, it's a warning message. I'm going to guess you all got the same thing that said one warning. That's fine. If that ever comes up on your screen, occasionally you're going to do something. The system's not going to know what it is. So it's going to say this. It's going to say one error. It'll probably happen to you. It happens to me all the time. If that happens, what you want to type in there then, if you get an error, is show errors. All right? We got a warning, so we don't want to type in show errors. We want to type in show space warning semicolon. And hit enter. And notice what it says. You have an error in your syntax. It's got something that it doesn't understand. You may get a different error message. When I ran this morning, it came up and it said, you do not have a database basically named Rankin. Okay? But the point is, the system is letting you know you tried doing something, the command succeeded, but the system didn't exactly know what it was you were trying to do. Does that make sense? So it's warning you about that. All right? So let's go in and create the database. Now notice here we said drop database if exists. And please look on the screen. Don't type this in yet because I want to show you two things. So please, and even though it's on your paper, I'm going to show you two different ways of doing this. All right? So I can type in now. Again, notice if I type in show databases, I think you'd all agree there's nothing there named Rankin. Correct? All right. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to type in create database Rankin. All right. And I'm going to say again, show databases. And you'll notice that now Rankin is there. Does that make sense? All right. Well, I can do that and it's fine. But notice what happens if I try it again. All right. And it did actually beep at me, and it gave me an error. The reason I'm telling you this is most often when you are creating a database like this, you don't type it in like this. You type in create database if not exists. See that? So did you notice it didn't beep? Maybe you could hear that, maybe you didn't, but it gave me a warning. So again, I come up and I do my show warnings, and it says, can't create it, it already exists. Does that make sense? All right. So go ahead, we'll just do the regular create. So go ahead and type in create database Rankin semicolon and hit enter. So that's the first command we looked at was create. All right. Now I'm not going to run it again. I already have the database. To verify that the database now exists, do show databases semicolon and hit enter. And now you should see Rankin in there. So we've also done show. All right. Well, just as important to learn as how to create a database is how to remove one. So we're going to say drop database Rankin semicolon, drop database Rankin semicolon, and hit enter. And it says, query OK. Now, please look up on the screen here. There are going to be times when you run a command, and it's going to come back and look like this. Query OK, 0 rows affected, and you're going to go, it didn't work. It did. All right? Now, in just a minute, we're going to create a table, and it's going to have all your names in it, and it's going to have all your grades in it. Okay? And then we're going to run a really stupid query that's not even on your list. I'm going to say, show me all the people in the database who got a grade of Z. Why? Because there is no Z. That makes sense? So we're going to get back a result that looks like this. It's going to say, query OK, 0 rows affected. What that means is, there's nothing that met your criteria. So imagine that I was doing a database for a company, and I had salaries in there. And I said, how many people make more than $1 billion a year? There probably would be none. So it probably would come back and say, query OK, 0 rows affected. So when you get that back, that's not an error message. That says there's nothing that met the criteria that you just put in. All right? Now, again, please look on the screen. You all agreed. You all did this, right? You've all got Rankin? That database is not yet active. To make that database active, we have to say use Rankin. And please look up on the screen. See where it says MariaDB none? Notice as soon as I put the use Rankin. Oh, why is it saying that? Oh, it's because it's use database, not use. No, it isn't. It's just use Rankin. So why didn't it like that? I want to see this. Show databases. I did remove it. Okay. Create database Rankin error. Because it's create database, not create database. There it is. All right. Use Rankin. All right. Do you see how my prompt changed? See that? All right. Yours should as well. You can go in and customize that stuff. So if Jesse doesn't like his prompt, he wants it to say Jesse / you can do that stuff. I'm not going to show you any of that. I'm more concerned with us going through and doing this stuff. All right. So now that database is active. So if you look on the handout, I gave you all the handout, right? All right. We are down to about 5 or 6 lines down where it says create table students. Everybody see that? So I'm going to type in those half dozen lines, and I'd like you to do the same. So create table students, a left paren, hit enter, and start putting in stuff. You can put it in all in lowercase, even though mine's not. And look on your screen. I should have put a comma after the word int there. I don't know how that even succeeded, because that's actually an error. So there should be a comma here. You don't put in those greater than signs, the stuff that's over here. This is called the line continuation character right there. It says that you're not done typing yet. That's all it means.
So if you actually go down to the next line, you got to typo out and go back up.
You can't.
So what is that?
Okay, there's 2 different things. First of all, what's going to happen to everybody eventually, I do it all the time, is you're going to start putting in the data. All right? And you're going to put in a single quote, but you won't put in an ending single quote. It'll let you keep hitting enter and hitting enter and hitting enter. Typically, if you just put in another single quote, it'll get you out. Now, if that's the case in yours, You can try just doing basically a control break on your system if that happens. And if that doesn't get you out, you might have to get out and get back in again. Now I'm asking, anybody have any problems doing that? Okay, then my guess is you typed something wrong, you left off a comma, or whatever. I don't know. I can take a look at it. But what I want you to see, if you look up on the screen here, you just created your first schema. The schema explains how this table will look. It says this table, we haven't put any data in yet, because you have to build, it's like a house. You've got to build a foundation first before you can go and add everything. It says this table will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields in it. Does that make sense to everybody? And it says the first field is going to be a rank and ID, which is an integer. It automatically will make it size 11. The second field is the first name, and it can be from 0 to 15 characters. The third one is the last name, which can be 0 to 15 characters. The fourth one is class, which can be 0 to 15 characters. The last one is grade, which must be exactly 1 character. Again, please look on the screen. Does this make sense? I'm asking you. That makes no sense. You can't put B plus into 1 character. Does that make sense? So we're assuming for right now that you can either get an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F, for example. But there are no pluses, there are no minuses. I could have made it size 2. I made it size 1 on purpose so I could tell you that. All right, and I'm going to go look at Anders. Is there anybody else that tried putting this in and you got an error message? Because you got to let me know. It doesn't make sense to go on if you're getting errors. Then I have to do it. So what you can do is if you're back here, you can get your DOS key. You know, you can start back at the beginning and then you can get your DOS key going down. Or you can do it right.
So mine wouldn't let me go back up that next line. I got to start over.
So you're again going to have to come in and type in MySQL space space. Yeah, that's what's good enough. No, it's because it saw that tick and it's looking for another one. And it's confused. Try doing a control break and see if that lets you know. There you go. Now you can start again. Now you're probably not, I'm not even sure exactly where you are right there. So type in show databases. I'm not even sure if you're still in MySQL or not. So it comes up with an error message. Okay, then do your MySQL minus U. It kicked you out of MySQL. No, MySQL is one word. Are you back in?
So how do I delete that entire line out of there that I don't want?
Just, I mean, are you using DOS key?
Yeah.
Then just go back up and don't put that line in. When you're doing this, all right, the reason that you're getting those errors, you've got to start all over again. But you got to start from the beginning again. You can't just fix that one line. That's all part of the same command. So you've got to literally start back from the beginning with your create table right from the beginning. Then you can use either your arrow up or your arrow down keys. Anybody else having problems? And this, you might think to yourself, man, this is kind of frustrating. First of all, we're going to automate it next week. Second of all, for those of you who are having problems, all right, you're getting frustrated, so are the people who aren't having problems. All right, because they just want to go on, and I get that. All right, maybe you've already been putting information in. I wish you'd wait, but I can't stop you from putting the stuff in. All right, I want to make sure that everybody has gotten to the point where we've all gotten the table in. Now, if you look up on the screen, please, if you got your thing in, now you should be able to say show tables, which previously would have come up and not shown you anything. And there's your table. All right. Plus, you can come in and put in DESC for describe students. And guess what? That is your schema. That's what you just did. Now, that's not going to give you that stuff unless you put in the table schema information already. And if you're a fast typer or fast typist, you might want to slow down when you're creating stuff in this, when we're using the command line like this. It's easy to put in a character you didn't need to put in, screw stuff up. And it's just human nature to do that. So, we came in, we've looked at show databases. We've looked at show tables. We've looked at describe followed by the name of our table, which was students. All right. We did a create table. All right. And we did a create database. Actually, I should put that one up here. First, we did a create database. And we also did a drop database. All right. Now, to go back to the question that Andrew asked before, let's suppose, you didn't probably do this, but let's suppose you put it all back in again. It all works, okay? But you discover, oh, I missed 2 of the fields, okay? Then there's 2 things that you can do. You can either drop the table like we dropped the database and start all over again, or you can do what's called an altered table. I'm not going to show you that right now. All right? Is everybody gotten to this point right here? Well, I'll tell you what. Comma had a comma. That's a continuing character. There's nothing hidden. So go back up. Start hitting your dots until you get back to create. Create tables. Hit enter. Put your down arrow key. All right. Enter. Down arrow key again. Enter. Down arrow key again. Enter. Down arrow key again. Enter. Down arrow. Don't hit enter. Get rid of that comma. Enter. Okay, then make that a char 1. Now, no comma. You enter. Now put in your ending parenthesis with a semicolon. Those of you who've already gotten this far, go ahead and put in those records that I showed in there. Take your time typing them in. The problem is, what you typed in was correct, but you type in use space ranking. Semicolon, hit enter. Now, start hitting your up arrow because the stuff you put in is probably okay. Keep going up until you get to your create table students line. Now, hit enter. Now, hit your down arrow. Okay, yeah. No, you wanted to keep the ranking ID. I'll hit up arrow again. I'll hit enter. I'll go ahead and find the first name. Hit enter. Last name, hit enter. Classes, hit enter. Grade, hit enter. right there you go, hit enter. Okay. You could do show tables if you want now, make sure your table's in there. You could do describe students to make sure that it looks like mine does up on the screen. And believe it or not, and honestly, I'm not just saying this, it's good if you're getting errors. Because it's common, and it's everybody's going to get some kind of an error sooner or later. All right, so I'm going to come in, and just as I showed you here, I'm now about halfway down on the handout I gave you, and I'm going to enter in those records. All right, so I'm coming in here. Insert into students. I hit enter. Rankin, ID, first name, last name, class, grade. All right, and now I'm going to put in the 6 students, or the 8 students, the 8 of you.
We have to type values in there, or?
Type it in exactly like it's shown. That's the best way to do it. You don't have, it can all be lowercase if you want. If you put your names in all lowercase, they will be all lowercase. The stuff you put in between the single quotes, that goes in there like that, literally. Oh, I screwed mine up. If I spelled anybody's name wrong, sorry about that. It wasn't intentional. Question was, can you copy and paste on here? The answer is yes, but it doesn't always work the way you would want it to work. All right? Sometimes it eats up any blank space you put in, then stuff doesn't work. All right, but we're going to look at that tomorrow. Like I said, my goal was to just get you to this point today. I'll get you caught up. Yep. If you look up on the screen here, this is where it gets frustrating. Please look up on the screen. If you forget one of those parentheses right there, it's not going to work when you get down to the bottom. You're going to have to use your DOS key and get back up and fix it. I know, it's a pain in the ass. Pardon my French. What we'll do next week is we'll use another thing that's built into this that's called PHP-MyAdmin, which will take the process and make it much easier. All right, again, every system that has this has the built-in command line. Not every system has the GUI, so that's why I'm showing it to you this way. one thing you're going to need is this. There's a folder in there. It's called MySQL, and copy everything from that folder over if you would. It's 85 meg. I'll tell you what, give it back for just a second. I want to copy it to my machine, so I've got a copy of it. There you go. If you could stop for a second, please, and look up on the screen. I'm going to assume for a second that you are just a no-good typist. Okay? Now, if that's the case, it's a pain in the butt to type in eight things and find out you've been screwing up. You see what I'm saying? So what you can do is you can put them in one at a time, for lack of better words. All right, so I can come in here and do this. So notice I've just put in one record. Does that make sense? But then I have to go back and start it all over again and do this, insert into students, like this, values, and then put in the second one. Now that may actually be easier for you, depending on how well you do or do not type. Yeah, I'm just going to be changing each one of these every time. You know, again, but everybody is different as far as, yeah, that's a lot better for me. Then do it that way. Because you don't have to change these, Josh. You don't have to change the class name or the grade. You just have to change the first three fields. So if that's easier for you, do it that way. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Dang it. just amazing, you know that. Yeah.
Oh, so let's see. So if I had to come back up and delete something again.
You can't go up to there to delete it. You know what I'm saying?
How do I do it again? Because I basically.
I'm going to show you that in just a minute. I'm going to show it in front of everybody because
Okay.
there's something called an update. We're going to do that in just a minute. All right, if you put in all 8 of them, it should look like this. All right, if you type too fast or you screwed something up, it won't look like this. All right, so let's assume if you look up on the screen here, because I just happen to look at him, let's suppose for Evan, let's say that instead of 6, we put in a 66. You with me? So we're just assuming we made a mistake. All right. Now, this isn't going to work, but I want to show you what the command would be. So I would tell it then I want to update what? I got to give it the name of the table. So I want to update students, and I want to set Rankin ID equal to 6, where Rankin ID equals 66. Does that make sense? Now that's supposing I made that mistake. I didn't. Now, please look on the screen. This is the most important thing you've heard all period. Anybody want to guess if I leave that where statement off, that line, what happens? It changes every one of them. If you do an update or you do a delete 99.99 times out of 100, you'll want to put a where in there. Otherwise, it updates everything or it deletes everything. There's no frickin' undo command in here. You got 800 records and you delete them accidentally, if you haven't backed it up, it's gone. All right. Now, notice when I hit enter, does not give me an error, but it just says 0 rows were affected because it looked to see who had a Rankin ID of 66. No one did. Does that make sense? Now, one more thing. Let's suppose, and I don't think I did, but let's suppose, and I know that, I think your name is spelled right, but let's suppose I spelled Tony's last name wrong. All right? So I could say the same kind of thing. Update students, set not Rankin ID, but I'd say set last name equal to, is it Calcaterra? Is that how you pronounce it? To Calcaterra, where, and where last name equals, and this won't make any sense because it already is correct, but just so you see that. All right? Again, it says it matched the row, but it didn't change anything because it was correct already. All right? So you can go in and change any of these. Now, if you've gotten that done, you can insert those phony records that are in there that I put down towards the bottom of the handout that I gave you. You can insert those 4 phony records. You don't have to insert 4 of them, but you can. And then you can go and you can do the updates and the deletes that are shown there. So what we've gone through this period was we did some show commands, some describe commands. All right, we did a create and a drop. We also then will have done a select, which shows you things, an update, all right, an insert, and a delete. All right, please look on the screen if you would for just a minute. These commands that we looked at, we didn't do the alter yet. We'll do that, but not today. These are DDL commands, data definition language commands. They work with your schema, this stuff. They work with that stuff. These commands that we did, these are your DML commands. They allow you to manipulate the data. These things are just miscellaneous commands. Most of these miscellaneous commands, like show and describe, they work. Notice if I say show databases. Oops. So if I say show databases, and I don't put in a semicolon, well, it does ask for it. If I use describe students, and I don't put in a semicolon, well, it's asking for it there too. It used to be with those miscellaneous commands, it didn't need a semicolon. Now it looks like it wants them. All right. So the idea behind today, all right, one of the things on the handout, or on the thing I had you copy, Devin, was this book. You've got the book now. That's almost the entire thing that you got. You've got this whole book on there now. It's on the handout that I gave you, or the folder I had you copy. So we went over chapter 1. We went over a couple things in chapter 2, but not most of them. We went in here. We logged into MySQL. We looked at our existing databases. We created a new database and immediately dropped it. All right. We created it again, made it active, went in, created a table, checked to make sure that the table was set up correctly, then added data to the table. Does all that make sense? That's what I wanted to get accomplished today. All right. Tomorrow we're going to go on. And I want to show you, because Jesse asked a really good question. What if this stuff is in a file already? Can we just copy it in? The answer is sometimes. All right, which is a crummy answer, but it's the best one I can give you. All right, so that's where I'm leaving it today. Now, if you say, hey, I sort of understood this, sort of did, sort of didn't, etc., what you may want to do then is to go out to this SQL tutorial that's out on w3schools.com. All right? You do not have to do this. Again, please, if I get nothing else out of you people for the next year, a year and a half to 2 years, whatever it is, don't say, do we have to? The next person who says, I just want to backhand them. I'm serious. I went back to Illinois over the weekend, and I said something to one of my kids. Do I have to? They almost got one. I mean, it's like, shut the hell up. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. So that's where that is. If you want to look at that, it's up on the screen here. You don't have to do that, but that will go over the major SQL commands. We have by no means covered all of them, but we've gotten a good start. That was the plan today. All right, just so you hear this, the plan is that we're going to spend about the next 3 weeks or so going over some MySQL and basically going over the first 8 to 12 chapters of that book. And I don't want to talk, today was longer, but normally I want to be done every day by 10 o'clock so you have an hour and a half to 2 hours to practice. All right, you do have an hour and a half today though. All right.